Kentucky is about 40,000 square miles of limestone, river bottom, and coal seam. Most people only ever see one slice of it. Churchill Downs, a distillery tour, a horse fence running alongside the interstate. They miss the rest. They miss a coal town the National Park Service rebuilt out of roofless metal skeletons, where you walk through the outline of a house and hear the voice of someone who lived in it. They miss a Scottish iron furnace the size of a small castle that never produced a single pound of usable iron. They miss the moonshine capital of Kentucky, emptied out not by the law, but by the federal government. And they miss a town that was bought, bulldozed, and erased to feed a power plant, and then turned into one of the most beloved folk songs in American history. That one is number 1 on this list. Stick with us for it. Hit subscribe if you like these backroads history deep dives, because we go looking for forgotten places like this every week. Today we are counting down 12 Kentucky ghost towns that shouldn't exist, but still do. Number 12, Sugar Tit, the town your phone still thinks exists. Start with the name because there is no getting around it. A sugar tit was an old folk pacifier, a lump of sugar or molasses tied up in a cloth and handed to a baby to suck on. A community in Boone County between Florence and Union ended up named after it. It was never really a town. It was a crossroads at US Route 42 and Kentucky Route 237 with a gristmill, a sawmill, a toll gate, and a general store. Before it was Sugar Tit, it was Pleasant Ridge. Then for a while it was Gunpowder. Neither name stuck. One account says the men loitered at the store all winter and came home late, and their wives complained they needed a sugar tit at the store. Florence grew south and swallowed the whole thing. But the name would not die quietly. GPS. Systems and caller ID still tag the spot as Sugar Tit. Somewhere in Boone County, a phone occasionally tells someone they are calling from a town named after a pacifier, a town that, on paper, isn't there. Number 11. Tombstone Junction, the Wild West town that burned twice. There is a frontier town in the Daniel Boone National Forest with a saloon, a jail, a barber, and a mercantile. The signs are still on the storefronts. And it was never a real town to begin with. Tombstone Junction was an Old West theme park about a mile from Cumberland Falls in McCreary County. It opened in 1969, grown out of the Cumberland Falls Scenic Railroad that Millard and Morris Stevens had built in the 1960s to draw guests to their motel. The centerpiece was a 2.5-mile ride behind a full-sized standard gauge steam locomotive, the only one running in Kentucky from the 1970s to 1991. There were staged gunfights and country acts. Keith Whitley played here. The model was thin. One theme, one steam train, and visitors who mostly lived close by. Fire hit in 1989 and again in 1991. The owners chose not to rebuild. In 1995, the leftover rolling stock and props were auctioned off. What remains is sheriff's office and barber signage hanging on empty wooden storefronts in the woods. The forest is taking it back. A fake ghost town that finally became a real one. Number 10. Creelsboro, the river port the highways forgot. In the 1800s, the Cumberland River was the highway, and Creelsboro on the North Bank in Russell County was the busiest port on it between Nashville, Tennessee, and Burnside, Kentucky. Settled around 1809, incorporated in 1836. Here is the part that catches people. The town had a bank, a school, 3 stores, and an inn for steamboat passengers, and a population of only about 50. 50 people running a regional shipping hub. Steamboats carried out grain, tobacco, and livestock, and brought back everything the river bottoms could not make for themselves. Then the river stopped mattering. New paved state highways in the 1930s simply routed the commerce around the town, and the Flood Control Act of 1938 set the Wolf Creek Dam in motion. Trade evaporated. Creelsboro shrank back into a farming hamlet, leaving grand buildings standing as monuments to a busier age. 5 miles downstream sits the Rock House, the Creelsboro Natural Bridge, one of the largest natural arches in the country, span over 100 feet. It nearly got drowned by a proposed dam site before locals lobbied to spare it. It became a National Natural Landmark in 1987. Up to 1,000 people once gathered under it for camp meetings and revivals, where preachers like Raccoon John Smith are said to have stood. Today there is a country store, a few houses, the decaying old buildings, and that enormous arch most people drive past without ever knowing it is there. Number 9. Bonelico, the coal camp with no lights at home. Here is the detail that stops people cold. The mine had electricity. The houses did not. Bonelico sat in the forested hollows near Williamsburg in Whitley County. It was founded in 1912 by the Bonelico Coal Company to mine a seam so prized it was called Blue Gem. The name itself is plain enough. Bon for good, Jellicoe for the coal in the creek that ran down from Jellicoe, Tennessee. About 350 miners worked there. They dug a seam only 24 to 40 inches thick, which means they worked it kneeling or sitting, mostly with picks and shovels. The camp pushed out nearly 100,000 tons of coal a year, shipped on an L and N railroad spur to Savoy. There were 75 houses, a company store, and a 3-room school that doubled as the church. And while the mine ran on electric power, the homes, the school, and the store had no electricity and no plumbing. The current went to the coal, not to the people who dug it. Around 500 people lived there at its peak in the 1920s, and roughly 1,500 passed through over its 25-year life. When the seam ran out in 1937, the mine closed and the town went with it. The woods have taken the rest. What marks Bonelico now is a single-state historical marker put up in 2016, a plaque standing in for a town that gave its light away. Number 8. Packard, the coal hollow that raised an Oscar winner. There is almost nothing left of Packard. Foundations, maybe some stone steps, mine traces in a tree-lined hollow 7 miles southeast of Williamsburg. No sign tells you what happened here or who started here. The town went up around 1900 when the Thomas B. Mahan family opened mines in a hollow above Big Patterson Creek in Whitley County. They named the town and the coal company after a local schoolteacher, Amelia Packard. At its peak, nearly 400 people lived there, with a company store, a post office, and a spur to the L and N railroad. It was not a quiet place. In 1922, after a coal tipple was burned during labor tension, 2 Kentucky National Guard squads were sent in to protect the mines. The camp kept producing into the 1940s until the seams played out and the families left. By the mid-1940s, Packard had effectively vanished. But in January 1926, in that coal town on the Tennessee line, a daughter was born to a mine official's family. Her name was Patsy Louise Neal. She grew up to become Patricia Neal, an Academy Award-winning actress who later married the author Roald Dahl. So you can stand at the mouth of the hollow today, in the quiet where a tipple and a baseball diamond used to be. And there is no marquee, no plaque, nothing to tell you an Oscar winner first opened her eyes right there in the dirt. Number 7. Barthell, the ghost town you can sleep in. Most ghost towns you look at. This one you can book a room in. Barthell was established in 1902 in McCreary County, the first of 18 mining camps built by the Stearns Coal and Lumber Company. About 350 people lived there. Before the unions, the miners worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week. When the mines closed, Stearns demolished most of the buildings on purpose so the land could reforest for the company's lumber business. Barthell became another vanished camp. Then a man brought it back. Harold Sonny Coger was a former coal miner whose father had worked these mines for 48 years. He convinced a former Stearns executive to sell him the parcel, on one condition. Any restoration had to be historically accurate, so Coger's family put in more than $500,000 and years of work. They hired the University of Kentucky to locate the site of every single house and building. They got the company's original floor plans, the building dimensions, even the paint colors. The result is a coal camp rebuilt almost exactly as it stood. The company store, the doctor's office, the schoolhouse, the cabins overlooking Paunch Creek. And here is the part that makes it strange. 15 of the old company houses have been renovated, and you can rent one and stay the night. People drive in, get a guided tour and a country dinner, and then go to sleep inside a ghost town somebody loved enough to build twice. If you are finding this interesting, drop a thumbs up and tell us in the comments which of these towns you would actually want to stand in. We read everyone. We have covered the quirks and the coal camps so far. From here, the stories start to take things away from people. Number 6. Kyrock, the town that paved the Indy 500. Most boomtowns are built on gold, silver, oil, or coal. Kyrock was built on tar. In Edmonson County, near Mammoth Cave, the ground holds a strange material: bituminous sandstone, silica sand naturally soaked in oil. Rock asphalt. You could lay it on a road without heating it or mixing it. In 1917, two mining and paving firms merged into the Kentucky Rock Asphalt Company, and in 1918 they built an entire planned town in the wilderness along the Nolan River to dig it and process it. They named the town after the company, Kyrock. It had hotels, a church, a hospital, a theater, a post office, a commissary, its own railroad, electric and water systems, and a school. More than 2,000 people depended on it. From 1920 until it closed in 1957, it was the world's largest producer of natural rock asphalt, shipping hundreds of tons out by steamboat on the Nolan and Green Rivers. Local accounts say that material paved roads as far away as Cuba and Brazil, and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway itself. Then petroleum asphalt got cheaper, and that was that. The company closed in 1957. The town was disincorporated in 1966. Of a 2,000-person town, about all that physically survives is the concrete footing of a swinging footbridge over Pigeon Creek. The name hangs on in a nearby school and a fire department, a paving empire reduced to a sign. Number 5. Scuffle Town, the Cherokee River town the floods erased. The name tells you most of it. People came to this spot on the Ohio River and saw fighting. Around 1800, a man called Jonathan Thomas Scott, also known as Scott Fox, said to be a son of the Shawnee Chief Cornstalk, opened a tavern near the mouth of the Green River with his Cherokee wife, Mary Polly Cooper. A Cherokee community lived there. They played stickball and held wrestling matches outside the tavern, and white observers read all of it as scuffling. Add the drunken brawls among the flatboatmen who tied up for the liquor, and the place had its name. It grew into a real town, a school by around 1817, a post office in 1868, a tobacco operation that exported 400 to 500 hogsheads a year to Europe for pipe tobacco and snuff. An 1895 atlas put the downtown population at 71. What it could not survive was the river it lived on. The Great Flood of 1913 gutted the town, and the post office closed in January 1914. The far larger flood of 1937 finished it. The people scattered, and the bottomland went back to wetland and woods. It is called Scuffle Town Bottoms now. But the people did not entirely vanish. The town's Cherokee descendants organized as the Southern Cherokee and were formally welcomed as a tribe by Kentucky Governor John Y. Brown in 1893. They still hold their ceremonies in the area. The town is gone. The community that named it is not. Number 4. Golden Pond, the moonshine capital the government emptied. Golden Pond did not get taken down by the law. It got taken down by Washington. It sat in the rugged country between two rivers in Trigg County, on poor land where money was hard to come by. The town ran from 1882 to 1969, formed from two older settlements, Fungo and Golden Pond, and it was twice burned down and twice rebuilt in 1898 and 1936. The name came from a nearby pond whose surface caught the sunlight like melted gold. During Prohibition, the seclusion of that between the rivers country made it ideal for stills. Many residents turned to moonshine, and some of it was good enough that Golden Pond became famous or infamous across the country for it. Then the federal government arrived with a different plan. In the 1960s, the Tennessee Valley Authority was given congressional authority to create the Land Between the Lakes Recreation Area, and that meant buying out and evacuating the entire peninsula. There was fierce local resistance. It did not matter. The last residents were gone by 1969 and 1970, and the town was erased. Two man-made lakes now box the peninsula in so tightly you can only reach it by roads from Tennessee or by crossing the water. There is a detail here nobody forgets. A moonshiner named Virginia Hooks had her husband memorialized on his shiny black tombstone with an etched image of him running a still, taken from a magazine photo of what two old revenue agents called the only legal moonshine ever made between the rivers. The town is gone. Its visitor center stands on the spot. A man who made his name dodging the law spends eternity advertising it in granite. Number 3. Blue Heron. The ghost town rebuilt as skeletons. When the National Park Service decided to bring Blue Heron back, they ran into a problem. There was nothing to bring back. Blue Heron, also called Mine 18, was a Stearns Coal and Lumber Company town on the banks of the Big South Fork of the Cumberland River in McCreary County. It opened in 1937, employed about 300 miners at its peak, and was carved into the side of a mountain above the river. The company controlled everything: the housing, the store, the daily rhythm of hundreds of lives. In December 1962, the underground mines closed for lack of profit. The town was forced to empty out. Stearns hauled away some buildings, and the rest simply rotted. By the time the Park Service moved to interpret the site in the 1980s, not one original building was standing, and there was almost no written record of the place. Just memories. So they made a choice. Instead of building fake replicas, they raised open metal frameworks, roofed steel skeletons with no walls, on the exact footprints of the original buildings: a depot, a school, homes, a full-scale model of the coal tipple. They called them ghost structures, and here is what makes it land. At many of those skeletal outlines, there is an audio station. You stand inside the bare frame of a house, and you hear a recording of someone who actually lived in it, describing their life there. You can visit today. It is a working interpretive site in the Big South Fork. You can walk the trail, step into the concrete mouth of Mine 18, and feel the temperature drop the moment you cross into the dark. It is the only ghost town I know of where the buildings are see-through on purpose, so you fill them in with the voices of the dead. Number 2. Edri. The Scottish castle that never made a pound of iron. On a hillside above the Green River in Muhlenberg County, there is a structure of hand-cut stone that looks like a crumbling medieval fortress. It has nothing to do with castles. It is a monument to one of the most expensive failures in Kentucky history. Around 1855, a man named Robert Alexander, Kentucky-born, heir to Scottish iron money, decided he would build a great iron-producing town on the river. He bought roughly 17,000 acres. He named the place after his family's hometown of Edri in Scotland, and he imported about 200 Scottish workers, along with a steam engine, to build a stone furnace 55 feet high, described at the time as briefly the largest in the world. By 1856, the town had 200 residents, and the hopes were enormous. Then it all came apart. The Scots were unfamiliar with American ore and reportedly refused local advice, like switching to charcoal. The furnace ran only a handful of times. According to the state historical marker, it never produced any saleable iron. None. Alexander walked away by 1857, leaving the workers he had brought across an ocean stranded in the Kentucky woods. One family historian remembered it as a generational wound, the ruins standing, in her words, like an old fortress, a symbol of failure and frustration. In 1866, the Civil War general Don Carlos Buell bought part of the land to prospect for oil and to dream up an industrial city. That failed too. The furnace still stands. It picked up ghost legends along the way, and a quieter kind of fame. When John Prine sang about the abandoned old prison down by Edri Hill, this is the building he meant. It was never a prison, it was just a dream nobody could make work. Number 1. Paradise, the town they hauled away. You climb a low hill to a cemetery and you stop because the view is wrong. There are no streets below you, no general store, no ferry landing, no rows of houses. There is open ground, vast, strip-mined acreage, and the bulk of a power plant sitting where a town used to breathe. The wind moves over grass. Machinery hums somewhere, and the gravestones look out over an absence, surnames that used to be shouted from front porches, facing a place where the porches no longer exist. This is Paradise, Muhlenberg County, on the Green River. And almost none of it is left. It began in the early 1800s as a trading post called Stom's Landing, later renamed Paradise. John Prine, whose father grew up here, once called it a real Disney-looking town, a quiet riverside community with a store, a post office, and a ferry across the green. Then the coal underneath it changed everything. In the 1960s, companies found the seams were shallow and easy to strip mine, and the Tennessee Valley Authority built a coal-fired power plant beside the town that would grow into one of the largest in the world. To feed it, a Peabody strip mining shovel 20 stories tall tore through more than 5,000 acres of Muhlenberg County between 1963 and 1986. The town that had endured the noise and the soot for decades was finished off by the plant itself. The TVA bought out Paradise and bulldozed what remained around 1967. The post office closed the same year. By the early 1970s, the town was simply gone, but Prine had already written it down. His 1971 song, Paradise, made the town nationally famous, covered by John Denver, the Everly Brothers, and others within 2 years. And here is the detail that says everything. Peabody Coal was so stung by the song that it circulated a rebuttal pamphlet called Facts vs. Prine, which sniffed that the company had probably helped supply the energy used to record the very song accusing it of hauling Paradise away. You can still find the cemetery. There is a music museum in Central City and a memorial park named for Prine near Rochester Dam. But the town is air now. They erased the place. They could not erase the song. And in the end, the song outlived the plant. Kentucky hides its strangest history down gravel roads, under lakes, and behind power plants, places most maps gave up on. For me, it's Blue Heron. A whole town rebuilt as see-through metal skeletons with the voices of the people still playing inside them. That one will stay with me. Which of these surprised you most? And which forgotten Kentucky town did we miss? Drop it in the comments. If this kind of forgotten history is what you came for, subscribe. There are towns just like these waiting all over this state.